Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and today we're going to be talking about Havok and Wolverine, Meltdown. This was a 4-part graphic novel, I guess you'd consider it. There were 4 different parts, started in December of 1988. Somehow that one was delayed. Part 2 was delayed by a year. So December of 1989 is when the next one came out. And then each successive month afterwards, part 3 and 4 came out. Really freaking weird. I don't know how that happened, but it is what it is. Maybe one of these days I'll actually get the opportunity to ask Mr. Simonson, because this was actually by Walt and Louise Simonson. They were the writers on this. No, Walt actually didn't draw it, go figure. So the creator of Beta Ray Bill just kind of took a backseat on drawing. Okay, I'm cool with that. That's fine, because the art in this was superb. It was superb. The artists in here were actually Jon J, Muth and Kent Williams, who did the pencils, the inks, and the colors. But they had some help with the colors by Sherilyn van Valkenburgh. She must have been a hand pick, because she would also color in 8 of the issues of Orion when Walt Simonson went over to DC and wrote for that book. Drew for that book also. So anyway, Bill Oakley would be the letterer for that book. Bill Oakley was a very interesting person. He actually died at the age of 39, very young. Went to the Kubert School of Art in Dover, New Jersey, which I must have driven by many times and never once actually noticed. Go figure, because I actually did business in Dover for a while. Anyway, Bill actually had a very interesting lettering style, because he was one of the guys, I think he was one of the originators for it, when he didn't have a whole lot of room for a word bubble. One, he always hand drew his word bubbles instead of using a stock image. And you can actually see all the crazy things, the crazy patterns that he would do. Very innovative. And again, by hand. This man was not just a calligrapher, he was an artist. This was before the letters were digitally imprinted in. So he would actually sometimes take the top of the border box, the very top of the panel, and have a word balloon go in there, like that, instead of separating the word bubble from the edge of the panel. He would actually combine them just to have a little bit of extra room to do his writing, which made it look amazing, impressive, beautiful. Anyway, so this book was meant to be, in a sense, a standalone, but it was never a standalone. This was such an amazing issue, and I'm telling you, I couldn't appreciate this properly when I was younger. It's funny, I don't know if this is the comic book store that was eventually purchased by Kevin Smith from Clerks and Mallrats fame, but, Jay and Silent Bob, he played Silent Bob. I don't know if this was the same comic book store that he would eventually buy, but before he ever bought a comic book store, I used to travel 3 towns over by bicycle with my money in my sock. Oh, they hated me whenever I paid, but whatever. They were like, sock money guy. Yeah. Shut up. Too young to have pockets. Too young to have a wallet in my little biker shorts. Anyway, I was 12. It was a very different time when you could travel 3 towns over on a Huffy Racer bicycle. So anyway, I would travel there and I would purchase all my comic books, and I found this one and I just thought, this is the oddest. It was wrapped in cellophane, so I couldn't open it, and I just thought, this is the weirdest, coolest looking cover I've ever seen in my life. Oh my God. And of course, as any 12-year-old back in I guess it was 1987 or 88. It had to have been 88, because that's when this book came out. But I saw this book and I just fell in love. I'm like, this is the most beautiful book I've ever seen, and it's Wolverine. Every kid is in love with Wolverine. So I bought it. I bought it with my sock money. And it's funny because, later on, I would look for part 2. I'd look forever for part 2. Never found it until I was much older, actually until I was in high school, towards the end of high school. My local comic book store, another one that Kevin Smith professes to have gone to many times. That's too funny. Way too funny. But we both lived in similar neighborhoods. I never actually met him, though. Or at least I never recognized him. So, hey, maybe he never recognized me. But the point is that, yeah, by the time that I finally read the rest of this, it was well worth it and it was necessary. Because when I read the first issue, I didn't appreciate the art very much. I thought, this is potentially cool, but I just don't like it. It's all just painting. You know, I'd find out later it's oil painting. And I just didn't like it. I couldn't appreciate it. I was too young to really get it. But then as I got older and I got even more into my art and I started going to art school and I started to realize the painstaking effort this must have taken and just the very interesting style that the artists took, I fell in love with this. And this is one of my favorite drawn books ever. I love the way that this book was drawn. So let's get into the story itself. So Havok and Wolverine are on vacation in Mexico. And it was a different time. There was no build the wall nonsense going on. So they were just hanging out, and they apparently just had a run-in with some locals. And it turns out that this foreign agency, eventually you'd come to find out it was the Russians. Mind you, this is a Cold War era book. All right? I just did 2 months ago or so, I did the 10 Nights of the Beast from Batman under Jim Starlin, Joe Arpaio. And I figured let's just continue with the Cold War books. They were so crucial to us back then. Anyway, they just busted up this gang, this ring, and it seems that they wanted revenge. So these guys come over and they start some trouble with Havok and Wolverine. Some words are exchanged, suggestions about the main guy's sister, while this guy goes and makes a comment about Wolverine's mother, who he never met and doesn't remember, mind you. This was long before Wolverine Origins came out, so he had no idea who his mother was, didn't know what her name was, nothing. But the guy insulted his mom. He's like, that's messed up. Havok is sitting at the bar. He's like, you don't even remember your mom. He's like, doesn't mean that she shouldn't be respected. Just great. Havok is sitting in the bar and he's not helping. Wolverine's going at it. He's like, you want to pop those claws? You want to cede the bet? He's like, nope, not at all. Not for a moment. So they had and of course Wolverine wipes the floor with these guys. Wolverine and Havok have a bet. They're going to go out and they're not going to use their powers to fight. Wolverine later pops a single claw, schnick, and he trims his cigar. He's like, this doesn't count, man. I'm just trimming my cigar. That's it. So apparently the rules were very specific. Don't use your weapons for the sake of fighting. All right? Only use your powers for the sake of messing around, like Havok would later on light a cigarette with the palm of his hand, He didn't actually smoke it, but whatever. So later on, these guys are hanging out in their hotel and they're talking, and the bet is, the person who loses has to buy beer for the rest of the trip. Havok's like, dude, I don't think I can afford to keep you in beers till the end of the trip. And like, there's no way. We're X-Men. We don't make that much money. So, anyway, they're basically muggers. They're not even muggers, dude. No, these murderers come back to to find them at their hotel. Break in, start shooting the place up. They got shotguns, rifles. They might as well have machine guns. They're shooting all over the place. But they got horrible aim because there's like a 57 Chevy convertible outside, something to that effect. And there's this woman who's standing outside. These two cats go and jump inside the car and they start driving off. Like, whoa, shouldn't we take the girl? I mean, we did just steal her car. So, all right, fine. So they back up, scoop her up by the wrist, pull her in the back seat and start driving. That's just too funny. Like, really? And she's cool about it. She's like, wow, so, you guys stole my car, huh? and not a scratch on the car. Bullets flying everywhere. These two don't get hit. The car doesn't get hit. That's interesting. So anyway, some other people start following these guys in a completely different car. Wolverine can't see. Wolverine's driving. He can't see them coming. I think Wolverine was driving. Anyway, I'm not going to pull the books out now because that would just be way too distracting. One of them was driving. I think it was Wolverine. And regardless, they're still contemplating, like, should we pop the claws and start using the powers? Like, what's going on, man? Because we're about to be in some trouble here. These guys are shooting at him. At one point, one guy rips off the top of the car, rips right through it, gets up and starts firing a freaking mounted laser gun. Firing laser guns at them. It's like, okay, this is getting to be a bit nuts. Havoc's like, all right, fine, I see. Gets up and just starts using his plasma emission powers. Boom! Takes the car out. Problem is, there's a bunch of guys all over the place, and they wind up driving off the road. And when they get out there, the one girl who is in the back seat says, yeah, we were just waiting for you to use your powers to make sure that you are actually who we thought you were. Now that we know that you are, she pops him with a bullet. Yeah, just shoots him. And then Wolverine's like, you son of a shriek, and just runs after her. She sits there and unloads. Even after Wolverine falls down, she's standing over top, still unloading. So they both wake up much later. Wolverine wakes up and he's just jacked. He is jacked up. He's like, I'm not feeling so good. But, you know, it's Wolverine. He gets better. So, what do you call it? He starts trying to look for Havok. He's like, dude, my bud is around here someplace. I got to find him. So he goes on this quest to try and find Havok. And he's using his enhanced senses and he's all this other place. These people are telling him that Havok died. So, you know, it's like, you know, you, I'm surprised you survived. You had 15 shots in you. He's like, 15 shots? So what? You know, I've survived bullets. It's like, I don't think you understand. Whoever shot you really wanted you dead. Dude, those bullets, they had the bubonic plague inside of them. What? So Wolverine got a 15 times dose of the bubonic plague. That's right, the Black Death. So he's just, you know, wow, really? So it's like, yeah, your buddy got shot up too, and he doesn't heal like you. He died, I'm sorry. So Wolvie's mad. And he gets up and he starts walking away. People are following him, but he's so focused he doesn't pay attention. He doesn't care. And he goes to the grave site that it was said, and he's smelling it, and he's like, this is bull. And he actually rips the tombstone out of the ground and throws it, and pops the claws and just starts digging and unearths the coffin. He's like, dude, there's something in here. This is ridiculous, but it's not Havok. So he rips it open, and there's a bunch of rocks in there to be the proper weight of a human body. They went through extensive trouble. Like, they might as well just killed somebody else of exact size and shape and weight of this guy, you know? So he's like, yeah, somebody faked that, which means this is good. You know, it's bad, but it's good. That means that Havoc's probably still alive and I can go rescue him. So he's going to go on his mission now to try and rescue his brother, Alex Summers, brother-in-arms, Havok. So Havok himself wakes up, and they're telling him that Wolverine is dead. So, oh yeah, your buddy, he's dead. You got shot once with the bubonic plague. We're curing you. You're getting much better. Your buddy got shot 15 times. Like, I don't think you understand. It doesn't matter how many times he got shot. He really can't die. Just so you know, he can't die. You know. So the nurse is there, and she's like, oh hey, I'm trying to help you. She's from like Idaho or something like that. And when I read her voice, this is one of the great things about Simonson and Louise's, Walt and Louise Simonson's writing styles, is that they're really, really good at writing in different voices. So you can clearly tell when a Russian is speaking, when an Oklahoman or Idahoan is speaking. Idahoan. That might be the right way to say it. You can tell wherever the person's from, as long as it's mentioned there, you can read it in that voice, in that accent, if you're familiar with it. And it's just great. It's amazing the way they write it. And it's just so fluid, you know? As long as you see that word bubble is pointing towards them, it's immediate to just take the different nuances of their speaking and press on in their accents, their dialects. So she's like, I need you to rest. You really need to rest. So she leaves, and some guys follow her up to the roof of this building, this hospital. hospital that they're in, where he seems to be the only patient, but he doesn't get out enough to realize that. Anyway, so these guys are like, all right, so what's going on? It's like, oh yeah, he doesn't really believe that his friend is dead, but psst, whatever, I'll make him believe it. Turns out this is the same chick who shot he and Wolverine. Yeah, it's really messed up. She's got, I don't know if this is, I think this is actually her natural hair. She had a wig on before to make it look like she had short, dark hair, but now she got a long, flowing red hair. I'm surprised Wolverine didn't fall in love with her. Redhead, what? So, yeah, there's some kind of a plan. You see, from the very beginning of this book, there's this guy, Dr. Quark. Her name is actually Quark. Dr. Neutron, and this guy, General Meltdown. But he's not a general anymore. He was disbarred, or not disbarred. He was dishonorably discharged and stripped of his rank. So he's just considered Meltdown now. We don't really know too much about him. Is he a mutant, or what is he? But probably a mutant. Anyway, he's this guy who has amazing abilities to just blast people with immense amounts of radiation. He basically is a nuclear reactor, but it takes a long time for him to repower himself just from surrounding ambient radiation. You know, there's radiation all around us. The question is how much, and it's not a lot. Even with your microwave on, I used to be an engineer, so even with your microwave on, and you standing in front of it, it still doesn't put out as much radiation as the sun emits, even while you're indoors. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's a weird kind of thing. No, your cell phone does not put radiation into your ear and all that stuff. That's just silly. It's just putting sound into your ear. But anyway, yeah. So he, this guy Meltdown, he's trying to become more powerful, and he needs Alex in order to do that, Havoc. And Wolverine's just really in the way. He's an inconvenient, very inconvenient speed bump that is more like the police road spikes that they put up. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, you think it's going to just be a speed bump, and all of a sudden your tires are all shredded. So, meanwhile, Wolverine is still operating, and he's running through, and he's literally running through people, and he's putting pieces together, sniffing around, all that good stuff. And he goes to a hotel it's like, oh, listen, I'm going to be hanging out at this hotel. If you find anybody who knows where my buddy could be. So this guy goes and calls, oh yeah, this guy says he's going to be at this one hotel. Yeah, he's going to be there. So you should go get him. And you said you're going to pay me, right? All right, cool. Yeah, no, Wolverine wasn't having it. So he's in there, and this guy just comes running up and puts a bomb inside the freaking hotel and runs out. Whole thing blows up. Wolverine, mind you, is a freaking ninja. So they don't go into the whole ninja aspect. It's just he's behind the guy. There's this guy who waited all night until the morning to see if anybody was going to leave the rubble. You can't spot Wolverine if he doesn't want to be seen, man. This guy trained with the hand. And then some. So, no, he didn't see him. Wolverine just pops up behind him. Hey, bud. Hey, bub. So, he's getting closer and closer. And by the time he gets to the hospital, this girl, Scarlet, who, her real name is Scarlet. She goes by the nickname Dr. Quark. Excuse me, not Doctor, just Quark. But her real name is Scarlet. And it's an interesting situation because while it's not explained in detail, the Scarlet personality and the Quark personality are actually different. Quark is the evil one. Scarlet is one who falls in love. And Scarlet did actually start falling in love with Havoc, but Quark was trying to repress it. And that was interesting. I wish that would have been elaborated on more, but it was perfectly fine. I loved the way that it played out. You know, there's some things that you don't need to over-explain. And that says a lot about the Simonsons' writing styles, and it's something to definitely consider trying to emulate. You know, knowing when you don't need to elaborate on something, when you don't need to beat something to death. You know, information that could just be gleaned and allowed as opposed to rammed down our throats. You know what I'm saying? Extra reading that would cause us to be bored. There is not one word that is wasted in this comic book past the first 3 pages, where it's very roughly research explained how a nuclear reactor works. All that being said, Wolverine is trying to find these guys, but Scarlet is able to trick. She actually tries using subliminal information through the TV, but it's interesting because they show how Havoc is extremely sensitive to all sorts of radiation, radio emission, light emission, all sorts of different energy emission abilities, and it started to give him a headache. The subliminal information that they were giving him through the TV, it started giving him a headache, and he wanted blasting the TV out of frustration because it hurt his head so much. So and of course he's got his natural resist domination. That's something that all of Xavier's students were taught, was how to try and resist mental domination. So it increases their resistance, their tolerance against mental intrusion. Wolverine actually has it better than Havoc because of all his years of dealing with people trying to mess with his brain, but there's a really good explanation given later, and I'll get to that in a moment. But Wolverine goes to the airport, where he goes to the hospital just after Havoc and Scarlet already leave, and they blow up the hospital. He winds up surviving and killing somebody who was there waiting to see him also. So he's just like, dude, twice you tried to kill me, man. Twice. Not cool. Now, let me show you how it's done the right way the first time. And make no mistake, Wolverine genuinely straight up murders people in this. Like the regular comic books that you see, there's not a whole lot of cursing. There's like no cursing back in those days. But in this graphic novel, oh yes, there is cursing. You know what I'm saying? And there is Wolverine cleanly running people through. And it was such an important comic book just for that alone, because Wolverine threatening to kill people and never actually doing it because he doesn't have that kind of a rating in his comic book was just so annoying. And the idea of, insinuating that he killed somebody off panel. I want to see it open. I wanted to actually see it. Bring it back to... Just pan the camera over there, man. I want to see the blood and the gore. In this comic book, you see it. And for the late 80s, that's really important, you know? Wolverine was just getting so soft. So this really built his credentials up again a lot. Anyway, these guys are trying to go to the Soviet Union because they hear about all sorts of things. They're actually trying to go to Poland, right outside of Austria. There's a whole bunch of things that they're hearing about. Now, obviously, this stuff is planted, and Scarlet is helping this stuff to be planted. Actually, Quark, very specifically, is trying to do that. The Scarlet personality is trying to be repressed, but she's falling in love with Alex. Alex has already fallen in love with her. And he doesn't suspect that she is who she says she is, or that she is the person who tried to kill them, in the first place. Well, didn't try to, but you get what I'm saying. Wolverine, meanwhile, just by the scent, he's like, you can't hide that from me. I know. Havoc is actually with this guy, and there's no fear. There's only anger. So he doesn't realize that she's whatever. And it's like, can you actually smell emotions? In comic books, yes, you can. Just ask Wolverine. I'll wait. Exactly. So he smells that she was doing his taxes and whatever. I don't care, man. Just suspension of disbelief. That's what happened. So anyway, they are able to go to, Havoc and Scarlet are able to get their hands on a biplane and fly off. Scarlet has a lot of connections, and she keeps giving sob stories how this is happening, causing Havoc, who's very protective, mind you, and always has bad luck with his relationships, further exasperated in this comic book. He's trying to disbelieve it, but it's just so believable that he believes it. He buys pretty much everything she's saying. So he doesn't realize that he's being played like a drum, So they get to this, to the mountains they're looking for, and all of a sudden, Wolverine, mind you, when he went back someplace, he actually wound up getting captured. And this is the part that I was trying to hold off on until now. When he gets captured, they put this device over his head, and they start immediately bombarding him with not only subliminal information, but they just start basically brainwashing him, and they're using massive amounts of drugs and everything. They've learned by now who he is and the fact that he can't really be killed. And he's just big time, just boom, blasting, hitting him from so many angles. And they keep him like that for about 3 days of just constantly bombarding him. So while Wolverine does have a better resistance to mental domination than Havoc would ever have, the fact is that there was just too much coming at Wolverine. You know what I'm saying? They had to be careful to not kill Havoc by using too many of the drugs on him. With Wolverine, they could just, pour the vat right over top of him intravenously, and just have it go inside of his freaking arms and whatnot, right into his mouth. Suck it up, drink it. And he was going to be perfectly fine. You know what I'm saying? But his mind was messed up. And they were like, dude, Meltdown goes and says, you can erase every single bit of his mind. I don't care. All I want is for him to have this information in his head. That's it. And that line of information was basically, go kill your friend Havoc. Seems weird since they need Havoc, right? And they needed to try and... The reason why they were trying to brainwash Havoc was so that he would be willing to take a kill shot at, what's-his-face? Meltdown. You see, they go and they explained that Chernobyl happened because Meltdown needed to absorb radiation. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way because it was a wide berth kind of thing. So while he did certainly gain a certain level of energy, the fact of the matter is, and the energy that he would eventually get, he could destroy a city with a single boof, no joke. That was actually a practice run that he did, that with a little bit of warm-up, he would eventually be able to destroy an entire city. But he needed to have the direct influx of radiation so that he could absorb it properly. If it's just going in all directions, he's only going to absorb what comes at him. So even if he's standing point blank, he's not going to be able to get everything. If he's standing ground zero, he's still not going to be able to get everything because it's a area of effect sort of ability, explosion that radiation will exert. So a direct blast from Havoc, they theorize, that will actually boost his powers immensely because he can absorb it all. So that's why they need to get him to a facility. Anyway, Wolverine goes and attacks, and Havoc gets jacked up really bad, and he realizes, I'm going to have to actually blast him full strength. So he does, kind of. He holds back a little bit, just a little bit, because it's his belief that if he were to go full strength, he could kill Wolverine. At the time, we'd find out later on that no, he wouldn't have been able to kill Wolverine, but whatever, I get it, So he does act like he's killed Wolverine. Wolverine is really unconscious, and he wraps him in his coat and everything, and Wolverine's just in his underwear, so he gives him his coat, his trench coat, and he goes and buries him in a shallow grave. Scarlet's like, what the frick, man? You killed your buddy. How come he's only in a shallow grave? We don't have time. Wolverine, rest in peace, man. Love you, baby. And then, boom, he bounces. With her, it's like, listen, we got to go. We got to go, and we got to, figure out what's going on. And she winds up stumbling upon a map, go figure, a map to India. So they built a nuclear power plant there, and they're planning on shutting, by the notes, he determines that they're planning on shutting that power plant down. So through it all, he recognizes that when they shut it down to run their tests, that's going to be the prime time for these guys to go in and try and cause a meltdown in the same vein that Chernobyl had. So that was the stuff they were talking about in the beginning of the first book. So very interesting, like literally the way that they explained it was so interesting. And that meltdown, he's figuring, okay, I don't know what's going to happen when that meltdown happens, but we got to stop it because all these people are going to be hurt. He doesn't know about general meltdown or comrade meltdown at this point. So Wolverine winds up waking up, and he's like, what the frick? Oh, man, Havoc did that so that my body would slowly start healing, and it would give my brain time to heal, because obviously my brain would go back to normal as soon as, whatevs. So he just needed more time for that to happen, and if his body was injured, then he couldn't kill Havoc. So that's why he did all that stuff. And Havoc did hold back just a little bit. And Wolverine recognized that. Anyhow, so what happens now? They all wind up going to this nuclear power plant. There's like no guards there for the most part. Even the few they do see are actually dead already. So Scarlet is pretty much fully in love. Like she's fully taken over of Quark. She's fully taken over by now, and she's just madly in love with Havoc. She's actually trying to explain to him what's up. He's not listening. He's just like, I got to go in there. I got to try and absorb this radiation. I have the ability to absorb solar radiation naturally, or any other kind of radiation, and channel it into these blasts if I want to. But the idea is that I can store all of this stuff in me. Very cool. Very cool. I believe he can actually do, it can actually absorb more than Tony Stark can. And Stark is mostly just electricity. Havoc can store massive amounts of radiation. And yeah, I believe more than Stark can comparatively, even though it's technically apples and oranges. So he's like, I'm going to go into the center of this place. Now, mind you, he shouldn't necessarily be able to absorb the heat that's around, so that was a little bit freaky to understand, but whatever. I'm totally okay with it. Whatever. It's a comic book. Scarlet, however, decides to don a not an evac suit, but you know what I'm saying, the radiation suit. And she goes in there with him, and he keeps on saying, "You got to leave, hon." And she's like, "Nope, not going to leave you. Not going to leave you." So at one point, Meltdown is in there, and it's like, "Oh, hey man, let's fight. Oh, you want to shoot me? Go ahead, I dare you to." But Havoc's holding back. This Meltdown doesn't need Havoc to hold back. He needs to fully let loose and just blast him as hard as he possibly can. It's the reason why he's trying to brainwash him, so that they can control him and have him blast him at full power, because he's a hero. He's always going to try and hold back. So once Meltdown realizes that Quark is gone, you know what I'm saying, and now it's Scarlet who's in charge, he's like, wow, you really did help us more than you think. So he blasts her with his power, kills her. She's dead. Havoc sees that, and that's what it takes. And you figure that's what's going to happen eventually. Havoc lets loose with everything he's got, everything he's already absorbed, everything he already had. Boom! Just tries to take this dude out. Unfortunately, he winds up growing in power. This is literally like the Sphinx, the living pharaoh. This is a lot like the living pharaoh. Just absorbs all this energy, man. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The living monolith. There we go. The living monolith. Basically Havoc's greatest enemy. The next big fight that Havoc would eventually have in Marvel Comics Presents, Marvel Comics Presents, would be against the living pharaoh's daughter or niece, something like that, and Wolverine would join him also. Anyway, so these two get into it, and at one point Havoc realizes, I can't hurt this guy. That's okay, because it turns out that, and mind you, technically at this point, Meltdown doesn't need Havoc anymore. He's good. So what happens at this point is Wolverine shows up. He's like, oh yeah, bub, now you gotta deal with me. Havoc, you finish absorbing all that stuff and keep these people safe. I'm gonna take care of this guy. And he has a hard time taking care of this guy. In fact, this guy, just his basic blasts are able to melt all of Wolverine's skin away. He's surprised to see that the bone didn't melt, but it's like, oh wow, your metal bones are really strong. Yeah, it's called adamantium, bub. His bones aren't going anywhere. So, but Wolverine, man, he's having a really hard time healing, because mind you, they're in the middle of a freaking reactor at this point. So he's already got massive amounts of radiation coming, bombarding his body, technically changing his DNA as they speak. You know what I'm saying? By all rights, I don't even know if he would still be considered a mutant at this point anymore. He'd be like a super triple double decker mutant. You know what I'm saying? Like, he'd be jacked up beyond, he'd be Fubar. He would be Fubar. All right, look that one up, kids. Tango and Cash, baby. So, whatever, Wolverine's trying to do the best he can, and at one point, he gets the idea, you know what? Let me take these borium bars that are here, all right? Wolverine somehow knows all about nuclear reactors, and he knows that borium is able to absorb radiation. You know what I'm saying? Specifically the neutrons. So that would cause that's the main point of getting radiation to disperse. In fact, Justice League Unlimited, I think it was the very first episode. That's season 3 of Justice League. They made it Justice League Unlimited. I'm talking about the cartoon. Everybody's seen that cartoon, right? And I think it was the very first episode. Green Arrow was in that one with a couple others. Remember, they always had 3 main heroes in that one, but Green Arrow was the main of those, and they were going up against this gigantic radiation monster, this nuclear monster, and Green Arrow had to fire these control rods. They were made of borium into the things like little tiny chest reactor, right? That's where the reactor was. So same exact kind of thing, except Wolverine just had to hurl these things as hard as he could, and get them to penetrate into this guy, Meltdown. And he did. He sent a whole bunch of them in there. And Meltdown actually started to feel it. Because mind you, when Wolverine's slicing with his claws, it's like slashing through water, he's saying. The guy's healing faster, as fast as I can. Yeah, it's actually a lot faster, bub, and you know it. The point is, like, he can't hurt him. But he's actually feeling pain. And the more he throws into him, the more it's jacking him up. So eventually he winds up withering away into absolute nothing. Havoc has to release some of this energy, so he winds up releasing it straight up. And there's just this plasma blast that goes straight up out of the atmosphere and into space. And there's a lot of really funny commentary on there. But he's able to save the planet from this meltdown, at the very least this part of India, from this meltdown that would have really just jacked everybody up. So yeah, that was actually kind of cool. Anyway, he winds up leaving. They both leave together, and they wind up, questioning, well, what's up with Scarlet? Now, Wolverine obviously knows what was really up, but he doesn't say anything about it. He's just like, oh, yeah, she was, you guys would have made a heck of a couple. She was one of the good ones. He knows the truth. But at this point, what's it going to help with Havoc? And Havoc was just in all sorts of self-doubt and doubting, like he's always had a problem. Havoc says at one point, I've always picked the wrong one, but not this one. This one was a good one, and as it turns out, nope, it was another bad one. So Wolverine was just trying to save him some extra pain. Very, very beautiful comic book. Mind you, 2 of the 3 aggressors died. The antagonists died. Professor Neutron, Dr. Neutron, still is out there, and it's funny where these guys were hiding. They were hiding under the asylum, the asylum in the Gulag. So I imagine that was up in the Ukraine. Is that where they kept the main Gulags? I can't remember. It's always in those old spy magazines. But anyway, so they kept them up there someplace. And the nurse would come in still, and he's there, and he's just... the whole time he's dealing with chess pieces, and he's got a Meltdown piece and the Quark piece, and that's the Black King and Black Queen, and then he's got the Wolverine piece and the Havoc piece, and he's dealing with all these chess pieces, and this is how he's actually deciding how, what their next moves are going to be. Well, he just winds up checkmating the Black King and Queen, but then he opens up his chest drawer, and the only bad part about this comic has nothing to do with this comic. It's the idea that the Simonsons didn't continue the story or go someplace else, because when he opens the chest drawer, you find a chess piece for Daredevil, for the Punisher, for all these other different characters. And it's like, oh my God, I wish that there would have been like a Daredevil Punisher Meltdown, or just all these other versions of the story that could have went on. It was just kind of left out there in the ether, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Let's see if I was able to save my pages or not. Are you kidding me? I didn't? Well, that was just silly. I think it was X-Men number 246. It was the issue that had... oh, wait, you know what? I actually saved piece over here. Yep, 246. There we go. I knew I saved that image. It's the one with Master Mold on the front. Looks like he's about to punch Rogue. Anyhow, in that issue... all of this stuff happened before that issue, because there is mention of this story in the issue. In fact, you saw the cool way that Wolverine had his hair look like he took hair gel and just his hands and then straight back like that. Well, Wolverine did that in this issue of the Uncanny X-Men also. And Storm's like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, just something me and Havoc did. He had some hair gel. And he's like, oh, it's just something I did down in Mexico. It's like, she's like, yeah, well, maybe that should stay in Mexico. He's like, yeah, you're right. He just rubs it out and goes back to his normal haircut. So that I thought was hysterical. I thought that was absolutely hysterical. Totally worth it. What a freaking funny moment that was. But just referencing the book that way. I loved that. Loved that. In the meantime, there was also Wolverine, what was that, 309? There we go. Wolverine number 309. Obviously, that's volume 2, because volume 1 was the Frank Miller, Chris Claremont one. But Wolverine number... And mind you, this is when volume 3 had come out, but eventually there was a renumbering, and it went back to the volume 2 numbering. So, whatevs, man. Whatevs. Either way, you can see the cover there. And Meltdown actually returned for that one issue. That one issue. Only that one issue. That was it. And go purchase that issue online, all that good stuff, to see what became of that. This was, for me, this was just an amazing book. This was such an amazing book. Had so much memories for me. It came at just the right time when I was starting to get frustrated with Wolverine. You know what I'm saying? At the time, this was my favorite comic book store. I would go there once a month when I'd saved up a bunch of money. And what do you call it? Just, and eventually when I found this comic book, I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And was so disappointed when I couldn't find part 2. And I had to wait years to find that they finally did, a year later, start making part 2, 3, and 4. This was a cool team. In fact, you could see in the 1992 cards, the Marvel cards that they made. So I think that was actually, did they do one in 91? I don't remember. But I remember 92 was the big one. That was the big one that everybody's like, oh my God, we need to get our hands on this. And they actually did a Wolverine and Havoc team, and they referenced this story ever so barely in it. The problem is, like I said, aside from, I guess it was issue number 23 of Marvel Comics Presents, where they had Havoc and later Wolverine would join them. That was the only other time that Havoc and Wolverine ever really teamed up again. And it's such a crying shame that more writers and whatnot didn't jump on that and say, you know what's a really great idea? To have these two hanging out with each other, because they just mesh so well in this, For me, it's like the idea they had Kitty Pryde and Wolverine together, and that was the mentor-mentee relationship. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, let's just dump that and let's just go with Jubilee instead. Sorry, I never took to Jubilee. And the main reason was because I thought she's not the one who was worthy of Wolverine's care. It was Kitty Pryde. So I was always very resilient to Jubilee. So it's just one of those things where it's like, if Wolverine, to me it's like battling The Undertaker in the WWE. You don't have to win against The Undertaker. Fighting The Undertaker puts you over. Okay, even if you lose to him, you still wind up being a better wrestler because of it. You still wind up being a bigger draw because of it. And meanwhile, I'm wearing his American Badass bandana. But likewise, hanging with Wolverine made you a more important character. And for me, this story is the one that really put Havoc on the map for me. I was always just like, yeah, he's the brother of Cyclops. He's got these plasma powers. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? He's not as cool as Cyclops. I read this story, and oh my God, Havoc's net worth in my mind went up just drastically. It went up so much. So the stocks were rising when I read this story. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. Collecting it's actually not that hard, and you can get it on the cheap all over the place, whether you want physical or digital print. So I have those links below. Yeah. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.